Welcome to Online 48 Hours. Well, the question tonight is Michael Jackson getting a fair shake? Well, some say he's being raked over the coals by the media when no one really knows about the case yet. Michael's brother, Jermaine, said this is like a modern-day lynching. Some say District Attorney Tom Sneeden is a man who is out to get Michael Jackson. Well, we're also going to discuss the idea that we spend too much prime time talking about a story that we really haven't developed yet. CNN spent all day on Thursday covering the Michael Jackson case. They tried to make it look a little bit like the O.J. case. Do we really need to see massive coverage of Michael Jackson in an SUV stuck in traffic in Las Vegas, or the touchdown of a Lear jet and have that run over and over and over again? Now, a major pastime in North America is celebrity cases. Some people are made celebrities because of the crimes that they may have committed. For example, the Peterson case right now. Now, to help us out tonight in studio, local broadcaster, currently the morning personality of AM 600, Bob Say. And my good friend, lawyer Scott Taylor's back with us again. Good to have you back here, Scott.
Nice to be back.
And well-known broadcaster, personality, you'll know this name, Red Robinson. And also by phone news correspondent for a number of news agencies, Craig McCulloch. So we've got a good panel tonight, and it's quite a topic. Michael Jackson, it's everywhere. We're also going to be doing another show on this on Monday night, so we'll be hitting that also. But tonight, let's start off. Red Robinson, good to have you on the program.
Well, nice to be here, Doug.
Just saw you the other night, and I didn't think we'd be talking this soon, but that's an added bonus.
You know, you bring up a very good point, talking about the personality frenzy over this thing. I saw an interesting thing pass before my eyes on CNN, where they've got the whole Michael Jackson thing, and one of the crawls along the screen is talking about the devastation in Turkey. I mean, where are our priorities here?
Well, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, all of a sudden, we sat there, Red, and watched, well, I was watching CNN at the time, so I guess I'm guilty. I think it was about an hour and a half of him riding around in Las Vegas. And they had two SUVs, and I thought, well, what's the purpose of this? Why wouldn't they just simply come on in one of their stories and say, Michael Jackson's currently back in Las Vegas, and show a clip of that? But why would we be running that again? And so that's kind of one of the questions I had to start off with you, Red, is you've seen some major media hype stories in your life, going all the way back to the Beatles and Elvis Presley and you know, so many different stories. But it looks like we're in for another one, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I know Bob Say would agree with this because we're media people that, and you too, Doug. But it's overkill nowadays and everything. You know, by the time they're finished with the story, you're wrung out yourself. You know, you don't want it anymore.
Yeah,
they overdo it.
I saw another broadcast tonight. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was one of the entertainment magazine shows, and they were showing the inside of the jet that they flew back in. I go, well, you know, why is that of interest? You know, I mean, oh, here's a TV that they have. Well, everybody knows they have that kind of stuff. It's just all of a sudden this whole media hype just boils around. And Bob, say, welcome to the show too, and I'll ask you the same question. This gives a lot of good material for morning announcers.
It does, but you know what? And I agree with what Red was saying about the media hype. But I think it's like we're watching it like this. You know, it's kind of like it's an accident about to happen, basically. And he's such a superstar around the world in terms of Michael Jackson, but he's looked upon by so many people as a freak. And I mean, Red's dealt with. I mean, he knew Elvis, he knew Roy Orbison, and I'm sure, Red, that in your dealings with these guys, and you got to know them, they all have their own kind of quirky personalities. But Michael Jackson's just—it's like he's just a total. He's become he's talented, there's no doubt about that, but he's become this total freak. And in terms of the way we're dealing with on the morning show, we're dealing with it as a news story, but you know what he's accused of isn't funny.
No,
not at all. I'm just staying away from that. If you're talking about his looks and some of the weird things he does, I suppose that's one thing, but when you're talking about what he's accused of, that's just not funny.
No, it's
not at all. And we're talking about a family, and now they've already talking about the fact that they've discovered who the father is. One reporter's already done an interview with the father. They've already let us know that the mother and the father are divorced. We're learning all this material. It's just media overload right now. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about, a lot more questions. We're going to come back. Great panel tonight. As I said, Red Robinson. We've got Bob Say with us. Scott Taylor is a lawyer. I'm going to come to Scott in a second, get the lawyer's opinion on all this. And Craig McCulloch is with us, who does a lot of work with a number of different organizations as far as news correspondence is concerned. Good program tonight. We're talking about the Michael Jackson case.
I'm in $363. I forgot about the $65 booking fee.
I think Michael Jackson has been set up a lot in his life, and I think he's always been on a search for innocence, and that search for innocence has only been found for him with children. And I think I'd be surprised if he had sexual relationships with kids.
But I think he's got a few issues that he needs to deal with based on what you hear.
As a person, I'm not sure, but I like his music. His music is good.
As a person, I think he's got a lot to be desired.
He's a pretty odd individual. He's a good musician, but as a person, he's a pretty strange guy.
Yeah, as a person, he's a pretty strange guy. Quite a strange set of comments right there. One lady saying that he's set up and he's been on a search for innocence, and that's probably why he likes children. His fan club, by the way, I saw an interview with a number of the people from his fan club. Very, very interesting. They are sticking by him in a big way. Many people saying, you know, they just don't understand Michael, especially coming out of the interview. By the way, we have with us tonight, Red Robinson is on the phone from his home. Craig McCulloch is with us. He is a correspondent. Bob Say, a morning host for 600 AM, and Scott Taylor, who is a lawyer, been on the show many times. You know, they say about Michael that, you know, here again, this whole idea is that he's been set up, that it's, they really hated that one, especially Michael, hated that one interview that he granted to the fellow that followed him around for 8 months. He feels terribly betrayed by that. Did you see that interview, Red?
Yes, I did, yeah.
What did you think of that?
You're talking about the BBC one, are you not?
The BBC one, where he gave the guy carte blanche and followed him around for, I think it was 8 months out of his life.
Right. But he allowed it, so I mean, what comes out of it, he was part of it. You know, that was his life there. You know, at that time.
Yeah, he talked in there, and I had a piece of paper on that where he was sharing that they felt tremendously betrayed.
Right.
That he felt that this fellow who did the interview, the name escapes me right now, basically did so for a media hype and wasn't concerned about Jackson's reputation at all, and had really misrepresented him a number of times during the interview.
We must remember, too, these are allegations so far. This is why I don't think it's fair, and you should, you know, probably address it to the lawyer on the panel here, but, you know, it's really, is this going to be trial by media? Whether he's guilty or not has to be found out in the courtroom, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into that in a second. As a matter of fact, we can go there now. Scott Taylor, it was interesting that they were bringing this up in one of the Canadian channels. Does it bother you as a lawyer to see, first of all, how the legal system in the States handles cases like this? Because this would be entirely different if it was here in Canada or Britain.
Yeah, well, it really does. I just want to say first that being weird, which I think there's a consensus that he does appear weird to a lot of people. Being weird is not a crime in itself. It's when the weirdness...
Well, thank goodness, otherwise I'd be in trouble.
but it's when that weirdness crosses the line and becomes a criminal offense is when we have to be concerned. But I'll tell you what the difference is. In the difference, we have an incredible media presence, and it's a frenzy, it's a feeding frenzy in the States. And what my concern is that feeding frenzy then fuels the prosecution, who then take direction in a way from what's happening with the publicity.
Well, how are you going to get a jury?
Well, that absolutely, exactly. So we have a prosecution fueled by hype, not necessarily fueled by the facts, and yet all this is happening before our very eyes. In Canada, at least we wait for the trial before we have all of the publicity. It doesn't happen that way. It's before, during, and after in the United States.
Michael Jackson, Scott himself, is using that publicity machine to help propel the defense. He's got Mark Garagos as his attorney. his defense attorney, who defended Winona Ryder a year ago, and who's up in Fresno fighting the good fight for Scott Peterson right now. So both of these sides are using publicity for their means, and we can go back to the O.J. Simpson trial. Oops, I said O.J. Camp O.J., and that was just a gigantic PR machine.
On the line right now is Craig McCulloch. He's our other guest that you haven't heard from yet, but you just heard him there. Craig, I'll ask you this question. You've covered a lot of press conferences in your young life. Your take on the press conference that was held in L.A., I thought that was really poorly done. And for the district attorney to come out, and here you go, Bob, you're saying this is a serious issue. This is a young man that has been, accusing Michael Jackson of child molestation. And you can't have a more serious issue than that. And these guys are up there saying, well, I don't listen to the music, and everybody's laughing and carrying on. What did you think of that press conference, Craig?
Well, I heard actually most of it on radio. And I just thought it was incredibly unspecific. At one point, I heard one of the prosecutors be really ambivalent in terms of being of any arrest warrant or what exactly the charges were. And yet, right after that, I heard that there's an arrest warrant for him, but they don't have him yet. He's in Las Vegas. It's kind of odd, we were going to go and arrest somebody, but we're waiting for his Lear jet to arrive so he can come in a $100,000 SUV to our station, and the fact also that that there were really, and we see this up here too with like the missing women's investigation. There's no real evidence to propel against him, and on top of that, this district attorney lost the prosecution. He never got to court 10 years ago. So there's this credibility factor with the main district attorney in Santa Barbara County about is this a vendetta? It was just so lacking in content. It was unbelievable. It's like for me, it was like listening to and watching an animated test pattern on television. There was nothing in it. It was just incredible. Yeah, Red,
it is amazing how we treat our superstars.
Yep.
And they sit back and say, well, we're not giving any preferential treatment. But it sure looked like it to me. Well, we're going to let the guy turn himself in, and we're working with the lawyers. And
what the vast difference is, though, and I don't think this has been pointed out. If you've got a Robert Downey Jr. who has a drug problem and goes to jail, people say, well, that's self-inflicted. If Elvis Presley's on uppers and downers and puts on a lot of weight, we say, well, that's self-inflicted. Same thing with Johnny Cash and so on. But what scares you, if this in reality comes out that he is guilty, it's something perpetrated against someone else, namely children. That's what's fearsome about the story.
Yeah, boy, I agree.
And I think you're looking at everybody here pretty much as probably a parent.
Yes.
And they're thinking about, okay, now what are people thinking sending their kids to Michael Jackson's place and he's actually sleeping in the same bed with them when you wouldn't even think of letting anybody else do that?
They have come out and denied that, I guess, that he actually slept in the bed. He said many times he slept on the floor. And his comment in this was, we have cookies, we put on a fire, I give them a bedtime story. This whole innocence type of, sleepover. But I totally agree with you. I mean, who in their right mind would allow their child to go into a situation like that? But again, I guess that's the whole idea is, this man is bigger than life, and some people are just so enthralled with that.
Well, Craig was talking about the hype, so was Scott, and even before this all came about, even when they went to his house, the cameras were already there. The hype started from the moment the police decided to go to his Neverland ranch and look for evidence. It's bizarre.
All right. Well, we got to take a break here, so guys, hang on. We'll take a break. We got a lot more to talk about. We talked to some people downtown Vancouver. We'll come back and find out what they had to say right after this.
The best doesn't have to be a
First approached by the suspect in front of his Sherbrooke Street apartment.
Welcome back to Online 48 Hours. We're having a discussion tonight about the Michael Jackson case. Here it was in the papers. Michael Jackson surrenders. Jackson faces child molestation charges. He's out on bail on $3 million US. By the way, he didn't pay the $3 million. A friend of Michael Jackson's paid that $3 million. And some people say he's not as well off as he should be financially. Although that's hard to understand because I think he owns, what is it, Red? He owns the rights to the Beatles and a whole bunch of other stuff, right?
Yes, he does. But apparently, Neverland, I think that's a bottomless pit of, keep pouring money into that and other things. So there's no reality, I think, but that's a whole separate story with Michael Jackson. If he's really Peter Pan, why does he look like Dracula?
Yeah. All right. Let me throw this one out here, and we'll just kind of jump into it. And Scott, you can maybe start off on this, and then we'll throw some opinions out from you guys. I'd love to hear. You can see how the defense is already preparing for this case. The prosecutor has it out for Jackson. This is what I've been hearing. Secondly, let me get this out. The prosecutor has it out for Jackson, and Jackson's brother comes out and calls this a modern-day lynching. The racism card.
Germain, yeah.
Yeah. He says, let me get it. He says, you got, and he even got stronger than that. He said, you got a bunch of racist rednecks out there who don't care about people.
Well, number one, as far as the prosecuting attorney, I personally, from what I've read and from what I've seen, I think that there is definitely an agenda, and that the agenda is Jackson walked away 10 years ago, almost I think to the day, from this particular prosecuting attorney, walked away from criminal charges as a result of a settlement, a cash settlement entered into by Jackson and the family of a potential complainant. I think the prosecuting attorney has said this isn't going to happen again. As a matter of fact, after that particular incident, it's my understanding that the law actually was changed to prevent payoffs from interfering with a criminal prosecution. So with all of that hype, with all of that publicity, I would say that it would be a sure bet that this prosecuting attorney is saying never again for Neverland.
What do you think, Bob, say that we have a prosecuting attorney that seems to be looking for a little media coverage himself and enjoys it? I mean, I really don't understand what in the world's going on here with him, and this is in a question form, giving an interview this early in the case to somebody from a kind of a news magazine, Court TV. I mean, that seems so strange to me.
Well, it's all about, we were just talking about this during the break, it's all about the media hype that we've been talking about. I mean, you've got Michael Jackson, you've got Kobe Bryant's case going on, and
Blake and
Scott mentioned Phil Spector. I mean, there's just all this going on, and everybody's just eating it up. And I guess, I don't know what it is, in the States in particular, they just all get caught up in it. They all become media stars. In fact, didn't Michael Jackson, Red, you can confirm this, I think, that he didn't write a song about, he changed the name a little bit, but he took a shot at the prosecution after that case 10 years ago.
Yeah, he absolutely did.
By the way, on his career, just a side note, he hasn't really been relevant for a decade almost.
No, I think his last album only did $3 million.
By anybody else's standards, it was a good seller, but not for him, you know.
Yeah, especially after Thriller and all of that.
Yeah.
We went out on the streets in Vancouver. We talked to a number of people there, and it's kind of interesting because this is the talk of the town right now, amazingly enough, even here in Vancouver. And we asked people, what do you think about the Michael Jackson case? And here's what they said.
From what they've shown on the media so far, I'd say he's guilty. I think he already bought himself out on the first time. I think it's going to be difficult for him to buy himself out of it again.
Oh, they're awful. Definitely awful charges. But that's about all I know. I haven't heard any of the evidence and stuff like that.
It's bound to happen if people allow their children to be in the house with Michael Jackson, and he has a reputation for being like that.
He did have a reputation as being a pedophile, and he's got that Neverland. If you were a parent, would you let your child go there alone?
Well, that has come up more than once tonight, and from a number of different people. If you were a parent, what was going on? But here again, now they're also, the defense is setting this up where they're painting a picture. Mom and dad are fighting. Michael Jackson had been so good to this family, he actually gave, I guess, the father an automobile so he could drive him out to Neverland. And the father has already said that mother has a tremendous amount of issues. So you can just see how this thing is going to start to play out, and it's not looking pretty. All right, we'll be right back. We're come back. Red Robinson's with us. We got cast 1,000. Scott Taylor, just a whole bunch of people here tonight. Looking forward to it, and we'll come back and discuss some more right after this. He's with AM 600. I got it right, Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Taylor, a lawyer, is with us again here tonight. Red Robinson, well known. Don't even, you just say that name, everybody knows who that is if you've been in Vancouver for more than a month. And Craig McCulloch is with us, who is a news correspondent. Craig, we're already seeing that this is going to be compared to the OJ case. There's already talk of the Dream Team coming. Are we really ready for the media blitz that's going to come out on this? What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah, this is going to make the OJ case, it was called Camp OJ in the media, it's going to make it look like the amateur bush leagues. Ratings were up for OJ. Everyone watched it gavel to gavel. This is a dream for CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. This is the biggest Christmas gift those network executives ever could have been given, ever.
Well, Red, what do you think about that? I mean, when you're looking at, not only do we have Michael Jackson, but we also have a superstar in Kobe Bryant.
Right.
And we also have these other two celebrity cases. I mean, what is our news going to be looking like?
Well, I'd like to ask another question. In our society, it's scary to me because where are our priorities? I mean, I get even angry in the morning when I get up and find out that City Hall's got singers there now, and they're worried about decorative sewer covers while people are being mugged in the West End, and they won't address the problem of not enough police and all that. And here we are talking about a celebrity problem in Los Angeles.
Yeah, boy, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's dominating. I mean, we'll be doing another show on this because it's coming up in the news magazines, and they've covered it like crazy.
Right.
And so here again, Monday night, we'll be doing this again. By the way, I will throw this out. If you're watching tonight and want to get a word in, the best way to do that is by email, and that's online at nowtv.ca, online at nowtv.ca. And email us, and we'll be able to read your email then on Monday night and get some comments in, because I'm sure we'll have a lot of phone calls on the Monday night show on this already. So there you go. So you guys, what do you think here? Michael Jackson, funny kind of, I've got 30 seconds. Bob, say I'll ask you if you can do this within 20 seconds. Do you think that in some perverse way, this is actually going to work for Michael Jackson in the sale of his new CD coming out?
No, I think this is, radio stations are already stopping playing his music. No, definitely not.
Yes. You agree with that, Red?
Yep, 100%.
Okay. Fellas, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We're talking the Michael Jackson case. And again, we're going to bring this up on Monday night. I'll see you then. God bless.
Believe it or not, the first written record of strange happenings in the Bermuda Triangle can be found in the ship's log of Christopher Columbus. Lying becalmed in the Sargasso Sea, Columbus and his men witnessed strange lights dancing above and below the surface of the water. Little did they know that would be among the most harmless of the events that would terrorize vessels in the Bermuda Triangle. The Mary Celeste was found floating adrift on the open sea. The vessel seemed to be in perfect condition, but the passengers and crew had disappeared without a trace. What happened to the 20-ton barge that should have been on the other end of this line? Did Flight 19, 5 Grumman bombers really get lost flying from Fort Lauderdale to Bermuda? Or is there something else at work in this troubled part of the Atlantic Ocean? Could it be that the lost continent of Atlantis has something to do with the lost ships and planes of the Bermuda Triangle? What is it that grips pilots and seamen alike with a cold
more family room?
Many people tend to dismiss the so-called mystery of the Bermuda Triangle in the same way they would a superstition or a fairy tale. But unlike harmless fairy